Hello and welcome to week number 10 in plant biology here at NICC. This is an interesting week for us. We move into genetic engineering and the applications of that genetic engineering, as well as touching on the theory of evolution and natural selection. You can find the reading for this week in chapters 10 and 11 in Concepts of Biology. So again, chapters 10 and 11 in Concepts of Biology, and we're going to start out with chapter 10 talking about biotechnology. You may find it useful to take a quick look back at chapter 9 in Concepts of Biology and review some of the basics for how DNA works. But chapter 10 is really looking at genetic engineering and the application of that DNA technology. So starting out in chapter 10, which is about biotechnology, we really are talking about how we put DNA and DNA technology to work. There's a lot of research effort put into these areas and a lot of money spent to enhance organisms' potential using genetic engineering. This is an important field of study and an important excuse me, and an important way of understanding how people are utilizing plants specifically for this class. One of the major biotech components that we talk about when we're talking about plants is the use of what are called transgenic plants, and this is a technology where DNA from other organisms is inserted into the genetic code of an existing plant. So this manipulation of the genetics of an organism to add on different or new or novel traits to make that new organism better suited to meet the challenges of their environment, whether they're drought tolerant, pest tolerant, disease tolerant, or say tolerant to something artificial like an herbicide. That's a great example of a transgenic plant. So we are in, I anyway am in the state of Iowa, and as I look out my window, I can see an abundance of corn. I also know that on my drive home, there's also an abundance of soybeans. Those corn and beans, for the most part, especially if they're what are called Roundup Ready crops, are transgenic crops. So these plants have been modified using DNA technology to be resistant to the herbicide Roundup or glyphosate generically. On a completely total random tangent, glyphosate and Roundup is part of an ongoing lawsuit, which is interesting in and of itself, especially in an agriculture state like Iowa. But utilizing our knowledge of DNA technology, those plants have been able to be changed so that they are resistant to that herbicide, so that when farmers spray that herbicide on their fields, the target plants are killed and the non-target corn and soybeans are not. So transgenic plants is a really big issue when we're talking about the utilization of DNA technology in plants. Additionally, in biotechnology, we talk about things like genomes, which is the full sort of genetic code of an organism. Genomic studies rather with plants are ongoing, and really these sorts of studies are looking for the new genes and new areas of exploration for plant geneticists to find opportunities to make a higher quality crop for human consumption. So that's really a brief overview of the biotechnology chapter. Understand primarily that biotechnology is really the incorporation of our understanding of genetics and DNA and putting that into use in a way that sort of benefits humanity or the environment or whatever sort of system you're interested in benefiting. Chapter 11 moves into the chapter on evolution and concepts of biology, and so we're moving away from something very specific with biotech and something again more broadly with evolution, and we're talking about the theory of evolution. That's theory with a capital T, and understanding how populations change over time in response to their environments. The mechanism that populations change by is natural selection. So the environment that these populations of organisms, in our case plants, they respond to their environments and change in response to them. And that really is sort of the crux of evolution. Early describers of the process of evolution, primarily Charles Darwin and Wallace, who sort of came up with a similar idea in a similar time. Darwin's the one who got the credit. Poor Wallace. Life is like that, though. That natural selection as the driver of evolution, that idea has really been tested time and time again, and then as our current understanding of how genetics works has been rolled into that sort of theory, and we've come up with what's known as the modern synthesis, where you have these sort of natural selective pressures and then incorporating again the genetic knowledge that we have. So it's important to understand the sort of early history of the development of the theory of evolution, as well as how new ideas and new technologies have been incorporated into that discussion. That's really very much the process of science, is the incorporation of new information and a refinement and development of our ideas. The chapter goes on to talk some more specifics about the mechanisms of evolution, as well as evidence for evolution. This is important in a plant biology class because plants are organisms. They are part of the natural world, and they respond to their environments. So understanding how populations of plants evolve over time can inform humans what's going on in their environment. It can also help develop newer, different products. Evolution is a foundational theory for biology. There's some pretty good quotes in the book about understanding that without utilizing the lens of evolution, nothing else in biology makes sense. That's a terrible paraphrase, but that's the crux of it. Biology is really about understanding evolutionary processes, whether it's at a very small scale or extrapolating out into broader scales. Evolution is a foundational theory that biologists use in their research. The end of the chapter, chapter 11, excuse me, the end of chapter 11 talks about some misconceptions about evolution. I think this is an important component for this class and this chapter, and really any sort of discussion about science, because misconceptions about evolution and science in general, how these ideas are developed over time, is really an important issue to address. I think that it's worth spending time on, and I think the book does a good job of laying out a number of the, I'll say, more common responses or refutations of evolution. So that should keep you guys busy for this week, week 10. Chapter 10 talks about biotechnology, and then chapter 11 talks about evolution. And again, both of these can be read explicitly in the biotech context for plants, and then chapter 11, plants are organisms, and they evolve in their environments. So the concepts and the ideas are exactly the same for plants as they are for animals or any other organism on this planet. So that should keep you guys busy for this week, and I'll talk to you next week.